So in this episode, we're going to be revisiting DCTLs, and in particular, I'm going to be looking at two from Mononodes.com. I use Mononodes.com all the time in my professional color grading, and they have a fairly new one called Color Shaper, and I want to show you how really good that is. The DCTLs that I'm using, you do need the full version of DaVinci Resolve Studio to run that. DCTLs don't work in the free version. And just to point out, I do have a discount code for this, so I'm going to give you a 10% discount code during the video for any DCTL on Mononodes.com, but this video is not sponsored by them. So I'm doing this because I enjoy using Mononodes.com. I might make a small commission on sales, but I'm showing you the tools that I actually use in my professional workflow. And also to point out that all the DCTLs on the Mononodes.com website are available as free trial downloads. So you can try them out first, see if it works on your footage, and make your own mind up. So I'm going to explain what DCTLs are. I'm going to explain how to install them. So if that's something you already know, use the timestamps in the video and just jump ahead a little bit so you can get straight into the Color Shaper. All right, let's go and take a look at what a DCTL is. So the DCTLs live up here in the effects library. And basically you take one from here, drag and drop onto a node, and then you get a list of all the DCTLs that you have installed on your system from whatever website you might have downloaded them from. As you can see here, I've got tons from Mononodes.com. So when you buy a pack, sometimes you get more than one in there. So these are not necessarily individual items. So how do we get these into DaVinci Resolve to start with? What you need to do is download the DCTL from the website that you're buying it from. So in this case, Mononodes.com, and you will download a folder with a DCTLE file in it. What you need to do then is install it into the correct folder, which is actually the LUTs folder. So if I open up my project settings and go to color management, down at the bottom here, you've got your lookup tables. And if I open the LUT folder, this is exactly where I need to install that DCTL. So you can see it's here, Mono Color Shaper here. I've got the utility one here, the version 1.2. If you bought utility version 1, you will get a free upgrade to version 1.2. So once it's installed in there, you need to restart DaVinci Resolve. And just in case you still can't see it, what you can do is go to here and just say update lists. And that will then populate your DCTL effects file here with all the DCTLs that you've got loaded in. So what is a DCTL? DCTL stands for DaVinci Color Transform Language. And what it's doing is it's allowing third-party developers and color scientists to access the tool set within DaVinci Resolve, but write their own effects. So these have to be stored somewhere. So they're stored in this DCTL effect here. And you access their own effects. So if I scroll down here, you'll see, for example, I've got this one, density. And these sliders here have been created by Stefan who runs Mononodes.com. And this is his own maths and science behind the tools that are in DaVinci Resolve, giving me access to these really cool density tools. So I like using them because they give me different looks and different feels than the current tool set in DaVinci Resolve. I'm going to first look at the Color Shaper, and I'm going to show you how I can do the similar thing using the Color Slice tool. So the first thing I'm going to do is access the Color Shaper tool, and I'm going to show you exactly what it is. Now, when I go into Shaper, so this one here, Mono, and it's just abbreviated as Shaper. You've got Shaper blue, cyan, green, magenta, red, skin, and yellow. And these are very similar to what you've got here in the Color Slice tool. You've got red, skin, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and magenta. You've got the 7 vectors. It's 6 vectors plus the skin line. Now, when you have a look at Shaper inside the DCTL, you'll see there's 2 versions. You've got Mono Shaper, for example, Mono Shaper Skin version 1. And if I come down here, you've got Mono Shaper Skin version 1 NE. Now NE stands for non-emoji. So let me show you what's going on with that. If I go to Mono Shaper Blue, for example here, we've got these little blue icons here denoting that we're in blue. So this is for saturation, density, and hue. I'm going to explain what the Color Shaper does in a moment. The reason we have a non-emoji version is that these are simply emojis. Now if I go into my color panel, here, my advanced panel, and this works on the advanced panel and the mini panel, not the micro panel and not the new micro panel as yet. But I can access these tools from my panel. So this is absolutely fantastic. It's a really nice way of working. But if you have a look here, it just says slider float, slider float, slider float on all the menus. The menus aren't labeled correctly. And the emojis that the color scientists have to use for the DCTLs actually just mess up a little bit the menus on the panels. That's all it's doing. They behave exactly the same. So if you're accessing this without a panel, you probably want the emoji version. And if you're accessing it using the panel, if I do the same thing but without emoji, so I go blue, non-emoji, exactly the same tools up here, but my sliders on my panel now read correctly. So you can see here, I've got center, range, luma high. So that's the only difference between the two. So what is the Color Shaper tool actually doing? It's a very smart tool that allows me to access saturation, density, and hue of a very specific hue range, and also define whether I want to work in just highlights, midtones, shadows, or the entire tonal range. And that is all within one effect. So it's a really smart tool. I'm going to show you how that works now. So let's load up here. We've got our skin one. So you've got all the different colors in here. You've got blue, cyan, green, magenta, red, skin, and yellow. So I've chosen skin. We're going to work with the emoji version here because it looks a little bit nicer in the interface. And we've got our ARRI test chart here. So we've got our two skins in here. And if I just do a generic one, you see I'm adjusting skin saturation. I'm adjusting skin density. And we're adjusting skin hue. What I want to do, let's just zoom in on her, for example. Let's just zoom so we can see exactly what's going on here. And I'm just going to move that around a little bit. What I'm going to do is put this highlight tool on, and immediately it's showing us the range that's being covered by that skin vector. So what we can do now is if we bring our luminance range down, you see already we're affecting the highlight side. Now I can make that bias change by moving this low and high slider here. So we can go to, that's the low side, and that's the high side. Now what we want to do is just check that we're centrally on her skin tone here. The range here is the amount that the skin tone actually covers, so that particular vector, how wide it goes. And then again, we can just choose a specific side. So there I'm choosing the highlight side of her face, and I'm just checking my range is good. Let's keep it nice and tight. But what you see is we get this really nice fall off. So the Color Shaper tool is by default giving us this really nice roll off so we don't get any hard edges when we're defining between highlights and shadows. Now the Color Shaper tool works in a large color space. So in my instance here, I'm in DaVinci Wide Gamut. I've got this slightly color managed, so I'm going ARRI DaVinci Wide Gamut to 709. It also works in ACES, it works in ARRI color space, Sony color space, whatever you want. But what's nice is when I press the highlight tool on, we see the correct tone of the image. So if I just bring my luma range back, you see that we're seeing it as skin tone and not as a flat log image. So this really helps me when I'm defining the areas that I want to specify in my effect. So I'm just going to take the highlight off here, and let's just have a look at the density. We just pull the density down a little bit on her face, and I'm going to switch that on and off. That's probably a little bit too much there. And let's bring up a little bit of saturation. And there we've got a really smooth effect. Okay, so that is how we use the Color Shaper on skin. What I want to do now is show you how to do that using the Color Slice tool and not using the DCTL. So what I'm going to do is switch that off for a moment. And we're going to go to a third node here. Just move these over. And let's have a look at how the Color Slice tool does this. So what I'm going to do is check our skin levels here. So if I press on this one here, this shows us our skin area. But what you see now is that we see this in log, because when I press the highlight tool in DaVinci Resolve regularly, it shows me just what's happening on that node. So we get this sort of log look. Now we can get around this building a much more complex node tree, but it's just the first thing I noticed when I pressed this highlight tool. However, I can still see what's being selected here. So what we want to do is just put the highlight tool on permanent. And I'm just going to check my center point here and just check that we're getting all the skin detail that we want in there, which we are. Okay, so let's switch the highlight tool off. Now, when we apply density to the skin in the Color Slice tool, it's affecting the entire skin range that we've selected. And we want to work in just the highlights. So in order to do that, I'm just going to reset that. We need to go to our qualifier. So I'm going to click on the qualifier here. And I don't want to HSL. What I want to do is just highlight the luminance. That's going to keep my key nice and clean. So I'm going to click on here. Let's go to our highlight tool here. And let's just sample a little bit of skin. And we need to just select the highlight range. There we go. So we've got it going there. Make sure we've got it nice and soft. We don't want a hard edge like that. Nice and soft. Okay, and then we can take that off, go back to our Color Slice tool, and now I can add density just to the highlight side. So it relies a little bit on getting our keys good, or else that's going to be a little bit noisy, but that's how I achieve the very same thing using the Color Slice tool. So what I really like with the color science behind the Color Shaper DCTL is that it's not relying on keys. It's using other methods to get that really nice roll off between highlights, midtones, and shadows, which is going to keep our image looking pristine. So this is from a TV commercial I graded a few years ago, and what I want to do is put a bit more definition into her jumper here. Let's make it a little bit more denser, and I'm also going to pop this bottle a little bit, get this green going. So let's use the Color Shaper DCTL again, drag and drop it onto a node. I've got a bit of basic color management going on here already, and we need to find it again in this list. Now, every time I'm going down this list, it can be quite laborious. So what I've done is I've gone to my gallery, And what I've done is pre-made some of these as empty nodes ready to go. So Shaper Red, I'm going to drag and drop it on. So instead of selecting it from the list, I've now got it as a preset. Now, I did save this annoyingly with a few presets already on, so I need to just reset those, but I could have remade that with all these set to 0. And straight away, you see our highlight tool is giving us a really good selection. So I want to just check the center point and just check that we're getting the best at these reds. And what I'm being careful of here is that we're not introducing too much on the skin. So let's just check our range is not including that. So let me just bring my range right down here. And we can just make sure where our center point is on that jumper. There we go, so we're getting a slightly tighter range there. And the selection I want, so I can decide here now whether I just want to adjust density in the highlights on a jumper or the shadows or the entire range here. So I'm going to get something around about there. Let's just lift that range up a little bit. I'm being careful not to bring in the fingers here. Let's bring that range slightly down. So just pushing and pulling these, we're getting really precise control of it with this super smooth fall off that we're getting. We're not to rely on keys or anything like that. We get a really nice range selection going on here and something like that. I'm going to take the highlight tool off and let's just put some more density in that. So you see there, if I just switch that on and off, we get really nice control here over those reds. I could window all these out as well if I don't want the fruit included. I could just put a power window around that. Now, if you're using the color shaper tool to identify several colors, it's best to work in parallel. So I'm going to right click on here and say add node, add parallel, because then we're feeding from this source as opposed to this one where I've already added density. So I'm going to click in here. I'm going to grab another DCTL. I'm going to select the green, put my highlight tool on. Again, we're seeing this in the real colors. We're not seeing it in a flat log image. And that is a really good selection already, actually. I'm just going to check my luma range is good. And let's see if we can just get that a little bit tighter in there. Exclude some of those. And something like that. Let's take the highlight tool off. I'm going to boost the saturation in there. I'm checking my scopes that I'm not going too crazy here. And let's just lift density. And let's see what that's doing. So if I highlight the two of these together and press Command D, I can see what's happening to my overall image. And that's looking great. I'd probably just put a window around this now to get rid of these so they're not included in that. But that's a really good use of those tools. Let's have a quick look at one more example before we have a look at the utility tool. And if I go in here, what I've done on this one is I've got, let me just get rid of my gallery here. I've got a fixed node tree. Let me see if I can show you that. And what I've done is I've applied a DCTL to it, and you don't even have to switch this node off. It's just blank because my DCTL list, the top will always be none. So all I've got to do now is scroll down here and let's have a look at Mono Shaper. Let's have a look at the sky and press highlights on here. Let's just check we've got the very best of that. We get a really nice clean image in there and we can add in our saturation and our density. And what's nice is when we're on the highlight tool, we're seeing the correct hue in there. We're not seeing the log image. Let's do one more. Let's have a look at our skin. I'm going to add a parallel here. I'm just using my panel for speed. And let's go to our shaper skin. And let's highlight that. Let's just check we've got the best of it again. Bring down our range. Let's just work on the highlights. Something like there. And then we're going to add a little bit of saturation, a little bit more density. So let's just have a look at what the two of those are doing. If I press Command and D, it'll switch just those two nodes off. And that looks great. So if you want to get a discount on the color shaper tool, I can get you 10% discount if you type in the code Darren at checkout at mononodes.com. Don't forget you can download a free trial of it first. Give it a try on your own footage. See if you like it. And if you do, 10% discount, code Darren. All right, let's have a look at the utility tool. And this has had a great update. I use this all the time. So if I go to my different timeline, this is a music video I did last year. This is the actual node tree from that video. In fact, you can see here, I'm on the density tool here is the Mononodes density tool. I've used that all the time on these videos. I'll just switch that on and off so you can see what's happening. That's affecting his jumper there. So what is the utility tool doing? The utility tool is a fantastic DCTL that allows me to monitor my skin balancing, my exposure, my saturation, and things like that. So like an extension of my scopes, but it sits on the timeline as a DCTL. Now, a perfect place to put this is actually at timeline level because you want to put this after audio color management. So this is a great use of timeline level. I don't do anything in timeline level apart from add this utility tool. So I'm going to add a serial And I'm going to come down here and bring in my DCTL. And down at the bottom is my Utility DCTL. So Utility DCTL gives you these 4 different items. Now, I'm just going to talk about the balance one today. Stefan Ringerschwantner, who runs Mononodes.com, has already done videos on how these other 3 work. So I'll put links to those in my description so you can have a look at those. But let's focus on the balance tool because I use this one all the time. So if I put that on, straight away what it's doing is giving me this skin tone indicator. And this is a really quick way of just seeing that your skin is balanced throughout scenes. I've done an episode on this that'll appear somewhere up here, so you can have a look at that in more depth if you want to, but I want to show you the improvements that have been done to this. It's really great. Now, having this at timeline level means I switch it on, then I go to my clip level, make my adjustments, then go back to my time level and switch it off, which can be a little bit of a pain. If you leave that on, by the way, it will render out with that guide on, okay? I'm going to show you the other guides in a moment. So I want a quicker way of accessing that. Now, if I've got the panel, it's really easy because I can just disable that. I can go clips up here and I'm done. If I want to check it again, switch here, switch it on, check it, switch it off, back to clip mode. But you can only do that on the advanced panel. So let me show you a trick that I learned off Stefan on his last video. So you go to timeline. If you actually make this into what's called a shared node by right clicking and say save as share node, what we can do is rename it. So I'm going to call it skin check or utility or whatever you want to call it. Let's call it skin check. And I'm going to take off the lock that's on here. So I'm going to take off the lock. Otherwise, I can't adjust any of these settings. And then what you can do is a little cheat. If you go back to your regular page, now you want to do this as part of your fixed node tree, or else you're going to have to do it for each shot. But you can click anywhere in here and say add a node. I'm going to add, there's my skin check one. And just have it sat here. Again, it's going to come in as locked by default. So I'm going to take the lock off. And what I can do now is switch this on and off just using this node here that's sitting on its own outside of my fixed node tree. And that gives me really easy access to save me having to go to the timeline, switch it off and back to here. So now that it's not locked, I can switch it on and off from here. So just a good little tip there. So what's this actually doing? The first thing, just as a recap from my previous video on this, but the first thing it's enabling me to do is see what skin tone is sitting, where it's sitting on the vector scope. So the yellow in here by default is the default skin tone line that the vector scope gives you. So bear in mind the skin tone line on a vector scope is only a guide. It's perfectly normal to sit under it or over it. Skin tone will just by default will spread across that line anyway. And what the balance DCTL is allowing me to see at a glance where the skin is sitting on that line without using the vector scope. So I can see here when it's yellow, it means it's sitting exactly on the line. Anything that's magenta is sitting towards the reds and towards the magenta. Anything green is obviously sitting around this side of the scope. So what's great with this is if I just update these thumbnails, right click and say update my thumbnails and go to my lightbox, I can see straight away what's happening and how balanced these are. So they're all sitting nicely yellow, there's a little bit of magenta coming in. So where the shadows are, we're maybe going into magenta, which is absolutely fine. And we can see that it's all looking really good. Actually, apart from this shot here, she's very magenta. So I would guess that this shot is slightly out of balance. So let's have a look. So the shot we want to look at is her here. So I'm just going to switch that back on. Okay, and I've not got the shared node in here now, so I just need to go back to my timeline, switch it on, and she's indeed purple. So what I'm going to do is leave it on. I'm going to come back here, and I want to adjust her skin tone. In order to do that, I need to use my offset tool. It's probably a good starting point. Offset or maybe gamma. So I want to make adjustments to her face. I want to get it more neutral and balanced with the rest of the scene, but it's hard to do when I'm seeing the Utility DCTL on. So what we can do is go back to the utility and use this new function where it allows me to split horizontally or vertically. So I'm going to split vertically. I can adjust the split position. And now what I can do is leave this tool on. I can go back to my image and I can make fine adjustments in here. So I'm looking not only at what the utility tool's given me, but I'm also looking actually at her skin. And that looks a little bit too yellow to me. So maybe she does need to be a little bit magenta. She's not straight on in the light. So I'm just going to pull that around a little bit more. And maybe we have a bit more of a hybrid of the two. So let's have a look at how that looks. I'm going to take off the utility tool. And we can have a quick look at how that looks. Yeah, it looks great. So that is really nicely balanced. This is a fantastic tool if you're just starting out and you're learning how to do balancing as well. It really will guide you with that. So let's have a look at some of the new updated features in this utility tool. So I'm going to click on this shot here And let's go back here. So as you know, I can switch that on and off here. And let's take the split vertically. We've got split horizontally as well, which does give you the full image. So that's actually really nice. Let's take both of those off, because the other things I've got in here are not just skin tone indicator now, but we've also got in here exposure heat map. So now what I can do is have a look at exposure. And again, we can do that across a whole scene. So if I update these thumbnails, go to my lightbox, I can see straight away that our exposure is nice and even. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cheat here. If I go back to here, let's go to this spare node here. I'm going to just adjust the exposure globally here so you can see what's going on. So if I'm really hot on my exposure, we go red. And if our exposure's under, we go blue to black. Another new one is the saturation heat map. So this is showing me areas of high saturation. So let's have a look here. If I go to my trim tool, let's increase saturation. And so we're getting very saturated in his face here. Let's put the utility tool back on. Yeah, and you can see as that goes red, these are areas of high saturation. Areas of least saturation would be more blue. So let's just exaggerate that. And there we go. Okay, I'm going to reset that. Another really nice addition is when you're using the skin tone indicator, you can get a little bit distracted because it's also identifying other areas that cross on the skin tones. So I'm going to press this, grey out non-skin areas. And this, if I just update these thumbnails, this allows me now to view in Lightbox just the skin tone. Everything else is grey, which means you can focus a lot better on the actual skin tones themselves. So this is another great addition. Another new one down here is highlight neutral. So if I put that on, let's just take those two off. This is going to highlight to me anything where the RGB values match. So whether that's grey or white or black, it's going to show me neutral areas. So there's no red, green or blue dominance in there. And the last one on here is monochrome. This is great for just checking exposure levels. It's great for adjusting contrast, and it's there just as a really quick and easy tool to use. So when I'm working on long form documentaries and that sort of thing, I've always got this balance node sat at timeline level. And bear in mind, I don't always want my skin tone sat exactly on that line. Sometimes they do deviate. So I've got an example here, and I'm going to show you what we can do with the utility tool. This is a music video that I did a while back, and you can see here that the skin tones are showing in the balance tool as being slightly magenta. This is intentional. I didn't want this skin tone sat exactly on the skin tone line. We wanted a slightly more magenta feel to the skin. So that is actually balanced. If you look at the rest of these, they're all consistently slightly magenta. However, I can have that represented, instead of being magenta, I can have that represented as being yellow in the balance tool. So let me show you how we do that. So we can click in here and we go to this new one called hue angle. What I'm doing is basically tricking the balance tool to say anything slightly magenta is now represented as yellow. And it's just a little bit easier for me to visually see that at a glance in Lightbox. So if I press grey out non-skin areas again, let's just go to our Lightbox. And now we can see that all the skin tones are showing yellow, which to me says they're balanced, even though we've matched them to be magenta, which is what we wanted. So this is just a couple of examples of DCTLs available from Mononodes.com. Have a look at the website, download the free trials. If you're interested in how I use the density tool, that will be in a video showing around about here somewhere. And I really recommend you just download the free trial, have a look. Don't forget the discount code. It's DARREN, Darren at checkout. It's going to get you 10% off any of the DCTLs. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you in the next episode.